kids.
Hey, look at us with our headphones on, looking like a bunch of dad DJs trying to be cool at the high school dance.
You're in all black. Where are you going?
I just can't. I'm going to the club, man. Can't you tell? I got my tan. I got my black shirt.
Tan and your black shirt.
No, I just got back from Mexico and then unfortunately just came from a funeral. So, not kind of the opposite of going to a club, but look, my great uncle Joe, he was the guy who collected the coats at the restaurant. He was a good guy. So rest in peace, Uncle Joe. And with that, let's start the show. Welcome to Making Chips. We are the longest running manufacturing podcast. We've been equipping and inspiring manufacturing leaders since 2015 when my buddy Jason Zanger had the idea to start this thing. I'm here with Jason, Mike Payne, Paul Van Mater, three servant leaders, incredible hosts to discuss this episode with you, our audience of manufacturing leaders. So let's get it going, boys.
Yeah, guy, I think this is the first time that I've been on a podcast with all three of you in quite a long time, right?
Yeah, I think so.
I think I've been mostly doing solo episodes, and so this is the first time that I've been doing them with you guys. So I'm very, very happy to be here.
We're happy to have you back, man.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Every time we have you back, it's like, man, things could have been a lot different. So yeah, we're super happy to have you here. So,
yep.
You go to a funeral, you start thinking about like how much everybody means to you. So
yeah, man, death is real.
Yeah, you included. But you know what? Like
I did it 3 times.
You did. You died 3 times in a day. We were like ready to change it to black for the funeral, but
right.
But hey, let's jump in. And kind of the inspiration of the episode here is a post I made on LinkedIn about a chip that is on my shoulder.
Are you tired of putting out fires? Is the coolant starting to go bad? Are your cutting tools edgy, or is that just how you're feeling? Chances are we've been there too. So we have to ask, what's the chip on your shoulder?
So what's the chip on your shoulder, Nick?
All right, so there's a company out there that does like TV, home security, internet. Again, I'm not going to name them.
Comcast?
I'm not going to name them. I'm sure Jason
Okay,
will.
I'm just guessing based on what you said.
I'll guess the top one.
Yeah, it's pretty obvious, but golly, like, I'll just put it up here to the group. Like, what are they known for?
Bad customer service.
Yeah, terrible customer service.
But you know what? It's actually interesting because, Monopoly.
Exactly.
They've actually gotten just a tiny bit better over the years, but they've went from just absolutely deplorable to just horrible. So
yeah, and they have. I'll give it to them. They've been like trying to add tech to make their customer service better. I think they should add like more humans that talk to you like another human because. Basically, so Mike, you spoke about Monopoly, right?
Yeah.
I got out of the Monopoly because they put fiber optic cable in my neighborhood. And I'm like, oh, heck yeah. So I'm getting like double the speed upload and download. This company's like from Illinois. They answer the phone. The person's like so excited that you're going to switch. You talk to the same person every time. And like my experience trying to cancel Comcast was like, I can't even cancel you guys. Like, I can't even break up with you. You're such a bad girlfriend. Like, it was terrible. Yeah. And then they're like, oh, we have to transfer you to somebody else because they have the like, please don't cancel department.
Yes.
And I'm like, I've already canceled.
The retention department.
Yeah, exactly. And they're like, all right, well, can you give us the reason? And I was so fed up. I just finally said, look, at this point, I'd rather eat a bowl of broken glass for dinner than deal with any more of your phone calls. It was so mean. And this poor person's like, okay, fair enough. But yeah, so like, yeah, exactly. And I feel bad. Look,
I bet they've heard a lot worse before.
Yeah. I mean, what martyrs, the people who have to work there. I mean, they should get hazard pay.
Well, that's why they end up doing their customer service out of one of the most sweetest countries in the world, which is the Philippines. And the people of the Philippines, they're just the sweetest human beings that you could imagine, and they probably just deal with so many angry, nasty people with a smile on their face.
Yeah, it really tests my faith. But I was like, man, this isn't.
Well, yeah, and most of the Philippines are Christians, so yeah.
Is that what it is? Oh, yeah, that's cool. Yeah. So the whole experience got me thinking, like, how important customer service is in our world of manufacturing. And
Sure.
so in the post, I asked, like, hey, can we tell some great success stories and some great, horror stories if you want to in the thread? And I got some cool messages there. But, Mike, you were one of the comments, like per usual. Mike, the social media millennial of the group, posting every day. But do you remember what you said kind of about customer service at Hill?
I do, because and I don't know that I would just say it was Hill. I mean, so I just came into the industry, operationally 7 years ago, and
I remember that.
yeah, and I remember at the time, you hear from a customer like, "Where's this part?" or whatever, so I'd go find it. Right, I'd have to go out on the floor. At the time, I had no idea if the material was here, if we were running the job, anything like that. You go out, you find it, and the response from a machinist might be, when you okay, customers asking about this part, when are we done? And the response was almost of the attitude of, when we're finished.
They'll get it when they get it.
Yeah, as soon as we're done, we'll ship it. When are we going to be done? Don't know, but we will ship it as soon as it's done. And
they were teaching you as a new owner, Mike.
Yeah, so I certainly
they're trying to.
I certainly wasn't accepting that answer, and having to dig in and figure things out. And just even asking the simple questions like, okay, well, we have 72 left. How long does each one take? Just doing the math to be able to answer the question that, and God forbid the person running it wasn't going to be here tomorrow, right? And then that extended another day. But I found, so often I would do that math. I'd figure it out. I'd go back and tell my customer, and they were almost shocked that my response was not, well, as soon as we're done, so it taught me real quick that, at least in our part of the world, with, that was kind of the common.
So the bar was pretty low.
The norm.
Yeah. They were kind of used to just being told, we'll finish when we finish.
Your call is very important to us.
Right.
We'll finish when we finish.
Yeah. So, that, we, of course, since then, in that 7 years, we've invested heavily in our processes, our systems, our culture, and so forth, where that's not our answer anymore. Hopefully now we're proactively answering that question.
So how do you think, when the old owner, had the business, that she was handling those types of questions? Was she just pushing forward you'll get it when you get it?
Well, I think, no, knowing her as well as I do, I know she was, she wasn't just simply answering that, but that's where she was starting with, right? That's the answer she was getting from the floor. But I think, just watching, I remember the first, almost year really, until we really had the systems in place to answer that question. You're just juggling. And I didn't necessarily remember last week which date I told them that job would be this week, when they're asking again, because we still haven't shipped it. Right. So you just had so many balls in the air that, you couldn't really provide good service. This
can be an unpredictable industry.
Oh.
You don't get like a tracking code on every part necessarily.
Yeah,
here's exactly what it'll be done.
Yeah, unlike almost any industry. It is you. There's going to be problems, right? You have to go into it assuming that.
But you talk about the systems that you have in place, and I think that's one of the biggest things.
That's changed everything for us, for sure.
So, Paul, you see hundreds of shops like Hill, and your comment in the LinkedIn post was like, some shops are really getting this and others aren't.
Yeah.
What would you say the biggest difference is between those that are getting it and those that aren't? Because it's still challenging and unpredictable work, even for the best shops and the worst shops, right? It's still hard work. It's
a couple things. First of all, I think that that sentiment that you'll get it when you get it, that's going away, thankfully. That was definitely the old school mentality. There's fewer and fewer shops that take that approach anymore, probably because the ones that stuck to that are not in business.
Right.
So that's good. That's a positive for the industry. But then to follow that up, I think there's two main things. One is the systems that you have to build, and I'm talking specifically at a machine shop, the systems you have to have in place so that you can have good service. And good service to me means, good quality parts on time, with good communication. through that process, putting price aside for a minute. Because the best shops, the customers don't need to call a check status, right? They're never
They get
late.
the parts when they need it.
Yeah, or if there is something that happens, they alert the customer in advance to say, hey, something happened. We already know it's happening. This is how it might affect your delivery, a week from now. It's not waiting for the customer to call them the day after that was supposed to have delivered and said, hey, where's my parts? Oh, let me go check. Shops that are struggling in that area, probably aren't getting a lot of repeat jobs and,
Right.
have a harder time staying in business. But then second to that, even if you are executing at a high level and really mitigating, the causes of, communication gaps that might cause poor service, there's still the systems you have to have in place to execute your service, your customer service plan, right? Who are the people on the front lines receiving those calls? What is the process for how fast they get that information, the response time to get back to customers, right? The escalation path, if they don't know the answer to something, who they go to. So you really have to map all that out and have really bulletproof systems to make sure that, customer service isn't just an accident. You can have people that care an incredible amount about doing a good job for the client and giving them good information. But if there isn't a system to back that up, they can't deliver, incredible customer service. So I think both are critical.
Yeah, I mean, you just touched on something that was the most immediate impact I saw. We talk about processes and systems. The most immediate impact I saw when we switched over to ProShop was, a lot of our ROI decision based on your software as a service pricing model was, okay, if I can save everybody an hour a month, the system pays for itself, right? So, that was kind of this basic math. It was pretty clear it would do that, right? And I remember I distinctly remember there in the first month how many times at the customer service manager level where you got that call, you got an email about a part. Like I said earlier, the process used to be you had to go find it, right? Have we started it? I had no visibility of that from my office. I had to go find it.
You sometimes had your expediter out on the shop floor or something like that. And there's some shops that still have that.
Right. You had to physically go find the answer to that question, right? And maybe it's a phone call. So you get the phone call, hey, where's part number XYZ123? I don't know. Let me check this out and I'll call you back. Well, that generally took maybe, it could take anywhere. It could be as short as 15 minutes, could be as long as an hour, right?
Well, if you could do it in 15 minutes, you're the CEO, the chief expediting officer.
Right. But, and I remember in that first month being able to answer that question while I was on the phone with the customer without getting up from my desk.
That should absolutely be the expectation. Yeah.
Right. So, and I remember my entire team starting to figure that out in that first month where, oh my gosh, not only am I saving an hour a month, I'm saving multiple hours a day. Right. So if it takes you, let's say it took 30 minutes to answer that question, you get 2 or 3 of those, that's half your day. Right. It was just gone.
So what's your thought on, so like, obviously we all want transparency into our own WIP, our own working process, but shout out to our old buddy, Jim Carr. He did something that I thought was pretty remarkable with just shared Google Sheets. And I don't know how he's doing it now, but he would share Google Sheets on like where the parts were in the process at Carr with his customers. So what would be your thought on that level of transparency, like letting them have a view into where things are at?
I can answer what my dream would be on that. I actually, so while I've got Paul here, can I put in a feature request?
Yeah, let me grab my pen.
Yeah. Where I would love to be with that is that, my customers have a login into my ProShop that obviously is a limited view of their jobs and the minute by minute, day by day, hour by hour status of every one of those jobs. That's what I want to give them at some point.
So when your machinist crashes your machine tool, it just like sends them like 18 push notifications, like late.
Yeah. Well, and here's why I say that, guys. Here's the heart of why I want to provide that. So when I wake up and I check emails, the 2:00 in the morning emails I get from my customers are often, hey, I need an update on this job, right? Well, I know what 2:00 in the morning emails that I send usually mean is I need to know the answer to something, right? I'd prefer to know it now. I don't expect to know it now because it's 2:00 in the morning, but if I knew it now, I could get back to sleep,
Yeah.
right? And if I could provide that level of transparency to my customers, I would love that. I mean, that's my ideal goal, is because if that's what's keeping them up at night and I'm answering that question for them, then I'm providing a much better level of service than you're getting from your telecom company.
No, I agree. That is a fantastic goal. There's definitely, when we've talked to many clients about this, and they're on all sides of the fence on that. Some of them are
Yeah.
like, "Oh, heck no, I do not want them poking around."
Well, they don't have to.
Even limited, information. They're like, "I don't want them to know I haven't even started that job yet."
Well, they don't
Because,
have to provide it to them.
Sure. But then others are just like you. They're like, yeah, if I can let them see, which operations are completed, or at least, what the anticipated completion date is
Yeah, we're
of
waiting on
the
material.
different steps. Yeah.
That whole thought process, Paul, of not being transparent though is starting to become a little bit old school thinking. And I think that, that's going to eventually go away where people are going to be pushed to provide that information because they're going to say, well, if I partner up with Hill Manufacturing, well, they are going to tell me that it's not in process yet. And at least that gives me some clarity because the only thing worse than your job not being started is not knowing what the status of your job is. That's even worse. And I think once people realize that, they're going to want to push for that level of transparency. And I know, like for us, we're granted we're not a manufacturer, but we're working on that same type of technology where we can be constantly and we get a lot of phone calls like that as well. But we want to be constantly emailing and texting our customers and letting them know the status of their orders. And I think that we're going to have that rolled out by Q1 of next year. And I do believe it's going to change and take some of that burden off of our customer service. It's going to unburden my customer service team from the burdens of the past that they've had. And I think that they're going to be very, very happy with that.
Well, it's just as important for you, Jason. I mean, I buy my tooling from you, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there are those occasions where customer calls and I don't know the status of the job because I don't know the status of some special tool I had to buy, right? So
Right.
then it's okay, well, I need to call and I need to check on this tool. And yeah, so I mean, throughout that whole chain, the more we can consolidate that communication, then it
Right.
just makes a better experience for my end customer, which by the way, they're probably calling because their customer's calling them. Right? I mean, they want to know
Yeah.
when that part's going to be somewhere. So it's
And Mike, if I'm dropping the ball with something, I would rather you yell at me a week before
right,
it becomes super critical than yelling
sure,
at me the day that it's critical. You know what I
right.
mean? Because that's way worse. Because that tone is going to be very different, and your perception of who I am as a service provider and just everybody out there that's much that same way is going to be different.
Yeah, I mean, I know we found, and again, kudos to ProShop, because we have earlier visibility into that schedule now than we ever did before. There's many times now the day we get the PO, we know we're going to be late, right? So we're able to communicate that the day they sent the PO. It's never been an issue on that day, right? It's only an issue when it's the day before it was due
That's the number one
or
thing.
the
Like
day after it was due.
people have a lot of empathy in our world because like they know it's hard. This is hard work, and so they're just like, just tell me as soon as you know. That's the number
Right.
one thing I hear from my customers. Like, don't wait till it's late and then tell me. So, something else that I think is worth mentioning. So, Jason, you're transparent even with pricing with some of your customers.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think in order to be transparent with pricing, you have to be transparent with value.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because like, okay, we're going to be transparent with our pricing. It's clear like what we're making on it, and also clear like the value that we're adding to your business. And like, for example, you do a lot of coaching.
Yeah, you got to educate them on that.
Yeah, exactly. And so like the more you're transparent with the value that the customer's receiving, the more you can be transparent with the pricing, and those things I think are very connected.
Oh, for sure. I mean, it's like if you go to the grocery store and you buy a gallon of milk, what does a gallon of milk cost these days? Like
I don't know. Like,
$6
I don't know,
or $7
$78. I don't
for
know.
organic.
It's
And
pretty
like,
expensive.
and like I was watching a video recently on, Hawaii, and you buy a gallon of milk in Hawaii, it's $11 a gallon.
Oh man.
But if there's some education so that people understand, well, the reason you're paying $11 is because we're not milking cows in Hawaii and pasteurizing it in
Sure.
Hawaii and
Sure.
stuff like that. We're having to ship all this stuff. So like, yeah, there's a education that goes into getting your customers to understand, and even like in why their tool is not being manufactured at the current moment. Like you said, Mike, it's like, well, it's not on the machine because you just gave me the PO yesterday. So there is a wait that we have before you get it on. So let's talk about these things ahead of time so that we can plan ahead and not have these types of emergencies.
Yeah, I think a huge part of what we're trying to accomplish in this episode is actually creating some sort of contrast between sales and service. You hear this cliche of, sales sells the first one, the service team sells everyone after that. And why is that? Sales, no one's like, oh man, I really need a sales guy right now. I have a big problem, but people are like, I really need a service guy here pronto, yesterday. So some of these contrasting notes about like how the connotation of sales versus service. Sales can feel transactional. Sales can feel promotional and persuasive. Sales can feel short term, profit driven for the seller, not necessarily the buyer.
Yeah.
I would argue that's all like bad sales, but you get why there's that connotation.
Part
We've
of the
all
process,
been sold
though.
to. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And then service is more supportive instead of transactional. It's more customer centric. It's more long term focused and retaining the business. It's more driven based on like long term value. And so I'm always kind of torn, honestly. I lead sales and marketing. Most people know that now, but I'm always kind of torn. Like, can I take sales out of the titles so like people want to see my guys more?
I did. No, I did that, and we still call. I mean, I'm not we don't, but clients. I know, like even like Mike. They still say, well, like sales rep. Like, who's my sales rep? They still use that language, but the fact is like we don't have a sales team anymore. We have account managers, and we have a revenue generation team, and that's not just generating revenue for Jason. It's generating revenue for our clients, and
Yeah.
we call them our account managers, and be quite honest, we don't need sales people as much as we need service people, and that's what they do. And that's from my perspective, as it relates to your business, Paul, that's like one of my big pet peeves as it relates to software companies, is that they're such hard sellers, and a lot of times you don't get that service after the fact, which for me, that's what I want. I think a lot of times for software, you could dig up, you should be able to dig up, the large majority of what you're looking for, self-servicing or self-selling yourself. And I want those resources put into customer service, because I know, like in my business, my margins are like razor thin, and I'd rather put those resources towards service and have my sales kind of like sell themselves, as opposed to having hard sellers. But I know in the software world, you must be fighting against that, compared to your peers, I would imagine.
Well, I think that's the whole nature of software as a service, isn't it? I mean, that's probably why it's driven, because you've got to provide good service.
Yeah, although still it's shockingly common that other companies that we compete against do not offer good service. They're known for just pretty terrible service, which actually makes our job a lot easier. And on the topic of the selling process, when we get on a discovery call with a company, we will be the very first ones to say, we don't think this is a good fit, right? We are not going to sell you our software, because the issues you're having, or the type of company you have, or the things that you're dealing with are not our specialty. And it's going to serve no one to, get into a business relationship that's not going to last, and you're going to be upset, and we're going to be, pulling our hair out trying to make you happy. So, that's, from the earliest days when I was the only salesperson, that was like a principle that was just foundational. We're doing no one any good if we get into a relationship that's not mutually beneficial. And, to your point, Mike, if we can, really kind of understand, the pain points that you're having in your business and demonstrate, beyond a reasonable doubt that, yeah, we can easily save you an hour a day of your people's, or an hour a month of your people's time just to flat pay for the thing, let alone all the other benefits. So yeah, I think that's pretty crucial. But the industry for sure, the software industry is absolutely known for having, hard charging salespeople that, will discount stuff and promise things that service team and support just can't deliver on. And it's terrible. It has a bad reputation. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, I think that, okay, we sold it, now we hand it to the customer success
throw it
team or
over the
whatever.
wall.
Why does customer success start after that?
Right.
The customer success should start like before you, like what you're saying, Paul, like before you even sell it to them. Let's make sure we can make them successful instead of like, boom, got the sale, see ya. If you got any problems, don't call me because I'll be selling this to somebody else.
Yeah.
Call the customer success person over there.
Nick, I actually had a software sale. This was a decade ago. A software salesperson tell me that, like, he said, you will never hear from me again after you choose whether to, buy or not buy. Like that was, and I was like, oh, that gives me a lot of confidence. Like he was that arrogant, and that was just very. But at least he was honest,
I mean, that's just how some people are structured.
Yeah.
I don't like that, but
yeah, I have a funny, maybe unfortunate example of this. One of our customers got a call from a sales rep, actually at an ERP company. One of the two of you are using, I won't mention which one. And got on the phone with the owner, said, hey, I'm selling this software. The guy's like, no, we're super happy with ProShop. Definitely not interested in switching. Thanks for your time. The salesman then hung up, got on a call, like found the phone number of one of like the, general manager or someone like that, and said, hey, I was just talking to the owner. He said, we're starting a trial and we'll, need you to work with us on this. And the guy's like, that doesn't sound right. So he calls the president. He's like, did you tell him that? And he's like, no, I didn't tell them that. So, I mean, just such an underhanded sales tactic, just unbelievable.
Wow.
He's probably telling his buddies like, hey, that's my best trick.
Yeah, he's probably
Once they get that demo, they'll forget all about it.
He's probably got a TikTok reel out there to, sharing that secret.
I've got issues with my ERP system, which is not ProShop, but Nick, that sounds like yours.
I'm actually certain it's not. So we'll just leave it there.
Paul, you bring up a great point though, because I mean, as all three of you know, I mean, I've talked with you, personally over the last year, especially where I've really dug into our sales efforts, personally, and gone after some very strategic targets. And, I mean, as a shop, I take that same approach, right? I mean, I feel like lots of times when I'm going on these sales calls, like this sounds cocky and I don't mean it to be, but I'm personally kind of judging them as much as selling them, right? Like, because I don't want them if they're not going to be my next 40-year client, right? Like I just, Paul, we just had the conversation a couple weeks ago about the production work, and, I'm not chasing the next company, right? The next job, and then I'm never going to see it again. But I have to know that their needs align with my capabilities to do that. And I have one right now, Paul, that I've talked with you about at least, that, I have some concerns on. If we're going to take this on, I want to make sure we're going to be good at it. And, cause I don't want to spend 6 months fighting and banging my head against the wall to deliver them quality parts on time every time, which is what we strive to do.
That's your like messaging, right? Your brand promise or whatever. I've heard you say that before.
Yeah. I mean, that's what we strive to do. And there's people out there that I can't do that for. Right. So I don't want to take on those customers. True. Much like Paul's saying. I mean, like if you're not a fit, you're not a fit.
Mm-hmm.
Tangentially related to this, companies, shops that realize and really lean into being good at a niche and not trying to take on parts of all types and all geometries and materials and sizes, it's so important. And the parallel is right there with the type of customers you serve. Don't take something just completely out of the blue that you have no idea how you're going to, get that done. just because it's generally not going to end well. So
Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly, Paul. I'm glad you brought that up because I don't think that that can be overstated from a strategic standpoint for, any type of company is, be really, really specific about, what your vision is for the type of problems that you solve, whether it's material or, industry or whatever else it is, because it just makes your life so much easier. Not only, your day-to-day operations, but your sales process and everything like that. It just, we used to grovel at every single piece of order that we could possibly get. And then we got to the point where we could say, what are we good at? And, essentially not fire those customers, but just, really not cater to those customers that weren't our specialty. And it just made all the difference in the world.
Yeah, we've
Yeah.
had to make some tough decisions. Like, we have so many different business units, and sometimes we've had to just be like, look, we're not doing a good job making our customers successful with this one. Let's let this one go.
Mm-hmm.
But almost everything we do, speaking of our niche, is peripheral, complementary to the machine tool. And the premise of this episode is that service will sell more than sales resources. And I think about that in terms of the equipment we're all using in our shops. And when you have this kind of like unified view of your customer, and you have we talked about systems a lot. Like, you have a system for distilling the voice of your customer into your own product development and why you're doing what you're doing. You think about like some of the features that were promoted at IMTS, they're very much oriented around service. Like, one of the most evident like pieces of the skills gap is machine tool service. It's like so many people complain about that. So it's kind of similar to like what Comcast is trying to do. They're trying to add tech to make service easier or less necessary into the machine tool. And some of that's really interesting stuff. I think we ought to be cautious in the machine tool side of like thinking technology is just going to solve the problem, because really it ultimately comes down to people taking care of you. But you're seeing a lot of like predictive maintenance technology in the machine tools, self-correcting systems, whether it be like changing your cutting tools before they break based on some sensors that are available nowadays, or some of the stuff we're working on is these like self-correcting coolant systems. So it's kind of like fixing the mix if it's off, and topping things off, and stuff like that. And it is really interesting to see how like service is actually driving the sale, and actually like the product development of the equipment too, which is just a way that service is selling more than sales.
yeah.
Hopefully I don't get fired from my sales position. They're going to be like, you know what, you're going to be
You're the new
service
director of service.
Yeah. But it's like, back to what Jason said about kind of changing the name. If I were going to change the name of like a regional sales director, it would be, like regional customer success director or something like that, So it's really about the whole process. And then I think about like the systems I use. I don't really live in the ERP very often because I'm sales and service and more customer facing. So for me, it's like the CRM, and how detrimental it would be if I only had sales detail in there.
Sure.
Talking about like letting your customer know when you're late, and being aware of like if you've fallen short with that customer, and what if you weren't, what if you walked in there and knock on the door, and you try to make a sales call, and you have no idea that they're very upset with you, and then you come in with zero empathy because you're only focused on sales, and so it's really important, and I'm working to kind of get rid of silos. Like, there's not like sales and then service, and they're in two separate silos. And once you're done selling, you throw it over the fence, and the service team picks it up. Because I think that's detrimental. You got to have like one customer success team, and you can't be afraid to sell, but also, don't decouple those. I think that's really important.
I think that's a huge takeaway for shops to change that mindset, because they're generally, that's not how they think about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're most shops are started, but they're not bought by people like you, Mike, although there's more of them these days. But a lot of them are started by people that were machinists and love machining and want to get into it, and they want to do a great job, but they don't have that mindset that customer success starts even before you quote it, right? It's got to be pervasive through the whole thing. And I've talked to so many owners that care deeply about that. but they're just running around like chickens with their head cut off all day because they don't have the systems, they don't have the context, the awareness, they don't have that real-time information of exactly where the job is. Looking, a couple clicks on your screen, it's like, oh, there's 3 parts done, it's going to be done tomorrow, whatever. I know, Mike, that was a game changer for you guys.
Oh,
so
crazy.
The systems and processes behind it that enable that, going back to what I said originally, just the good execution in the first place is so critical, let alone the systems for actually, tracking the inquiries and making sure they're all followed up on quickly and good information, and share that with the team. If the customer says, hey, I'd like to pull in this job, and you're able to, the old days of running outside, going to the Traveler, scratching out the date, writing in a new date on the Traveler, no one else knows that now. But if you can just change one date in the system and it updates all the dashboards and everyone's work queues, and they can see exactly what the change is and they get alerted about it, that's setting the company up for success.
You talk to more shops in a month than probably the rest of us talk to in a year. What are some examples of like just real customer service successes you've seen with some of your visits?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, one of the biggest ones I think that is just prevalent in so many shops is on-time delivery, right? So many shops struggle with, busting their butt all day long to try to hit, 50, 60, 70% on-time delivery. And it's not uncommon for a customer, once they really understand, once they're up to speed and everything's kind of working together, because there's so many things that feed into good on-time delivery. But, it's not uncommon to hit 95 plus, like for a year straight, just like constant. This is the new normal, right? And customers obviously love that. Customers will absolutely pay more if you can offer shorter lead times and really consistent on-time delivery. So it definitely boosts the bottom line. But I have 2 actual stories that are very specific that I think they're different in nature, but they outline 2 really important aspects. One, to your point earlier about you now have the information at your fingertips without having to go look for it. Talking to a customer here near Seattle, JJR Manufacturing. The owner was, it was after work. He was, I think, almost all the way home driving on the highway. And he got a phone call from one of their big customers, and they were kind of panicked. It wasn't 2 a.m., but they're kind of panicked about something. They're like, hey, we realized that we sent you a model and a drawing that had different tolerances on this really critical hole, right? We modeled it at one size, but then the drafter drafted it, to a different tolerance. We really need to know what size you made that right now, right? So in the old days, he would have had to, with this paper-based ERP, he would have had to, turn around, drive back to the shop, go down to the shop, look for that job physically, figure out where it was, open up the inspection report, if it was even written down, and say, yeah, this was the hole tolerance, But instead, he pulled over to the high side of the road, opened up ProShop on his phone, went to the job number, looked at the first article report, and said, oh, we made it, plus or minus 2 thou over, or whatever it was. Got that customer that answer on the spot, as opposed to, blowing his whole evening, or not even be able to get it to him until, partway through the next day.
That's amazing.
So,
that's impactful.
All right, what's the second story? I want the.
And he still got to dinner on time.
He still got to dinner on time. Exactly.
That's the second story. It saved his marriage.
Happy.
Yeah. Right.
No, we had another customer, a company called East Branch Engineering out in Connecticut. Really early adopter of ProShop. They signed up in 2016, actually, one of the very first companies. They were dual sourced on a part number with another shop because it was a pretty high volume part number, and their customer was just, hedging their risks. The customer got bought out, and they put in this new supply chain team that was just like slashing the vendor base. They're like, we're going down to way less vendors. And so they sent out sort of an audit team to go visit all the vendors, and they visited East Branch, and they visited this other shop. And they had already gotten sort of an inkling of, the service that they were getting from each of these shops. But, when they brought in that customer and showed them, in the conference room that everything was happening in real time. They could actually see like the inspection results popping into the fields as the parts were being made and the quantities going up. And, and then went and showed them that, walk down on the shop floor. It's like, yep, here's the digital version of what's actually happening here versus, going to that other shop where it was just completely paper-based. I don't know, let's go see where it can find your parts. You can guess which vendor got cut and which vendor won the full contract. That differentiate, and actually Modern Machine Shop magazine wrote an article on that whole situation, which was cool. But it just demonstrates that the ability to deliver that service is a huge differentiator when it comes to winning pre-Os.
Yeah, service sells more than sales.
I mean, along that line, I mean, I don't have a exactly similar story, but I do have the story of, I'll have customers come out and they're expecting a shop tour or whatever. It could be a prospective customer, it could be an existing customer. And, we never leave the conference room because we can look at everything from there. And I always take a little point of pride. Some of these are, global 500 size companies, right? Mm-hmm. And they like my system better than theirs.
I hear that all the
time. And they're like, oh, or I've even had the comment, I know, Paul, I've shared with you before. Like, oh, I just need to find only vendors that use ProShop because they like our system, right?
Sure.
I mean, obviously, I don't know that they're actually doing that, but still, I mean, it's just, I take it as a point of pride even there that's a sign to me that we're providing a good level of service and communication and all those things that we're talking about today that they appreciate and that it is impactful and it does mean something.
Yeah, as we wrap up, that's really the main takeaway. It's end of the year, we're approaching the holidays, everyone's planning for the next year. And for me, like, my main takeaway is, you're planning your investments. What are you going to double down on? And I would argue, even if you're off your sales targets, double down on service. You'll grow the business with the accounts you already have. Unless you have 100% wallet share with all your accounts, you can't get any better. I would double down on service, grow that business, and then that word of mouth will be massive for sales as well. So it's just, coming from a sales guy, you probably weren't expecting that, but that's kind of my takeaway.
From buying the company for the first 4 years, I didn't pursue new business really at all. And we almost doubled the size of the company by just doubling down with our existing customers and it was providing better service, better communication, all those things. We started there. We got really good at it with people that already liked us. And then we were able to take that to the market and with a higher level of confidence that we could deliver. I mean, I think probably everybody listening to this, customers, has more work that they're not getting, right? So kick ass at what you're doing, try to get some more of it, fine tune. It's hard to lose a customer, right? I mean, as hard as it is to get one, if you're doing a good job, it's really hard to lose one too. So, double down, provide that great service, to your point, Nick, and you could double the size of your business and not get a new customer.
Jason, do you have any concluding nuggets for us, brother? Because it's so good to have you back. I'm ready for you to end this with a mic drop.
Well, I don't know if I have a mic drop, but I mean, I wholeheartedly agree that service is the direction. And I think it was during our strategic vision probably about 5 years ago that was one of the things that I laid out to my company, is that we're going to be investing in customer experience as opposed to sales. And we ended up parting ways with some of our hard sellers and people that were really just there to try intentionally to bring on new business, and we just didn't see that as an actual effective way to grow our business. We thought that growing our business more effectively would be through, servicing our clients well and looking more for word of mouth and digging into where we can, outperform our competitors in an existing account. And it's proven to work much better.
Awesome. Well, hey, for old time's sake, help me wrap this up. If you don't provide exceptional customer service, you're not making chips.
And if you're not making chips,
not making money. Bam.